From beginning to finish, this year's Ultimate Partner Live brought together a level of content, quality, and experience not seen before in our industry. Session after session, leaders in our industry and award-winning partners delivered a masterclass, partnering with Microsoft. Generative AI is changing our world and our lives rapidly. And in this session, I was privileged to have Neeti Gupta, who's getting her doctorate degree at Cambridge University, lead a panel discussion spotlighting the incredible opportunity, the $827 billion opportunity in generative AI. Neeti's session features leaders Dux Raymond and Sri Ganapathy for this amazing session.
Well, it's great to see a lot of friends and family here. I was speaking with Tiffany earlier. I feel like we're all grown up. I know a lot of people here from over 20 years ago. We don't age though, so that's good. My name is Dux. I serve as the Chief Brand Officer of AvePoint. AvePoint is a global leader in data security, resilience, and governance. And just excited today to share our experience, not only how we monetize AI, but also want to share and give you practical ideas on how to grow your business and make money, especially today with AI. So looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Dux.
Good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning, right? Yeah, so my name is, you can call me Sri Ganapathy. I'm with Microsoft. I lead a Azure AI sales team. So our team is called the Global Black Belt team. And so within our sales organization, my team gets to work with some of the most complex AI opportunities and customers across all industries. I'm based here, local in Dallas. So I don't know how many of you were here last year when we did this at the Microsoft office. I got to speak to a few of you. So good to see some familiar faces. We obviously upgraded the venue. The Microsoft venue is still good, by the way, but this one's definitely better. So again, looking forward to the conversation. And like Neeti said, this is your time. So while we may have some slides and things like that to go through, feel free to interrupt us anytime and ask questions, because we want to make sure that we are answering what's top of mind for you.
Perfect. So let me get you started with, what is the AI opportunity? And there are lots of numbers you'll probably see, and I've picked one. And we look at this number and we think, $800-something billion. And then I look at what Microsoft market cap today is, and that's about $3.18 trillion as of today. It obviously fluctuates. So the opportunity in AI is, yes, it's huge and it's big. And even Microsoft is going after that opportunity, but really it's even bigger than that, because when we talk about a company like Microsoft with $3.8 trillion market cap, and you are partnering with them, then that just is a massive, massive opportunity. And to put it in perspective, I've also been looking at, again, it's an apples to oranges comparison, but the GDP of some of the top countries, $3.18 trillion is more than the GDP of UK, right? More than the GDP of France and Italy. And that is the perspective that I want you to kind of look at the partnership opportunity from. Because now you're talking about companies being bigger than nation states. Right? And of course, yeah, we are sitting here in US and we are looking at it from the GDP of US. That's, of course, a lot more. But combined, some of what is called the Magnificent Seven, even that is starting to get closer to the market caps, and the GDP of these nations. So anyways, I tell you the story is because I don't think a lot of us even realize how big this opportunity is, and then also look at Microsoft as a partner. What does that mean? Because I've been on both sides. I've worked at Microsoft, and then I've been on the partner side managing the relationship with Microsoft and other hyperscalers. When you're working with a company that's that big, yes, we know the opportunity, but the day-to-day, as a partner leader, the challenge is different. Because now you have to understand their playbook, You have to make sure you're working with what they need to do at the same time. And I think Vince was talking about how you have to kind of balance that internal factor as well. But that's not easy. And for those of you who have that lived experience, you know how hard it is to go in front of your CEO and talk about this opportunity. So yeah, so that's kind of how we want to think about this story. Microsoft has put a really good research, and they've been doing it for many years for those of us who've been around, working with IDC on what does it mean for a partner. And I do think that this research is actually quite interesting from that perspective, because that tells you and helps you quantify what is the value you can create in this partnership, right? The other perspective is it's not just the economic value that you can create for your company. It's also about, there's brand value that you can create, and Dux, you kind of go into that a little bit, but also what is the other kind of value you can create for the business. And thinking about that will also become important, because the shift is happening in the value creation as well, of what value do you create for your customers as you look at the technology and the shifts that are happening. And I see a few people nodding their heads, so I think that is starting to kind of make a little bit of sense. So what are the three things that I would want you to kind of think about as you're thinking about AI partnerships? I think starting with the first one is the bespoke partnerships. What we are doing today, one-on-one partnerships, is around AI use cases. And some of us who are thinking long-term, we are thinking about the ethical considerations. And I was at the AI conference in San Francisco recently in August, and some of these themes also emerged from a builder's perspective. So people who are actually building the technology were talking about, think about the new use cases, think about long-term, the ethical and responsible AI considerations, and make sure your bespoke partnerships. So you suddenly, as a partner leader, has to be the person in the organization who's thinking about what does, from an ethical AI perspective, this means. Who should I be talking to in the organization from a legal perspective to make sure that these things are coming together? And so, and the next stage is what the builders are talking about, is building tools for platforms. And what I mean by that is now you have to start thinking about how does your product, how does your services deal with the tools that are new tools that are coming. And Marketplace is an example of that tool, right? It is a commercialization vehicle, and you need to be able to figure out how to plug in. I remember when we were at VMware, we had to do a lot of work to make the private offers and the public offers even work on the back end, right? And I'm sure if you're at that stage in your organization, we're still trying to figure out how to work with marketplaces, you have to do a lot of that operational legwork as well. And lastly is that as the hardware, software, the data quality, which is an important hero in the story, comes together, you will see that that integration also creates opportunity. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that as well. But again, just to summarize quickly, you go from bespoke to platform tools to then the aggregated. And I think Greg kind of touched on a little bit about how agent ecosystems will be that. Because once the data comes together, that's when the human in the loop may not be there. But if the data is not aggregated, then forget it. Like the human has to be there to make sure that that data comes together. And I think those are the three key trends as you think from an AI partnerships perspective, how these pieces are coming together. And then I also thought it'll be good because Vince has done these amazing 200 and some podcasts to look at what are the trends, not just from the industry conferences, but also what his podcasts are telling as he's been interviewing practitioners like you and me to tell the story of what this tectonic shift is happening. And I think it was really interesting to see how the three key things that are happening in this space are around the AI ecosystem, and that's important, but also security and governance. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about that and debating, and I'll kind of pass this on to Dux in a few minutes, but that is an important part of the story, which was highlighted in the earlier sessions as well. And the reason that's important is because you can't have the data now on cloud and not worry about governance and security, and then think about the tooling that brings it all together, right? So given that perspective, I think I would want to spend a little bit of time now having Dux and Sriram given their perspectives, and then bring it back all together as we talk about data readiness, the reality of AI governance in customer organizations, and then also what does it mean from a partnerships opportunity, because as I said, until we have data quality, the effectiveness of AI cannot be realized, and effectiveness of the partnerships cannot be realized.
If you're part of the movement, you know I have a very strong point of view. I've sat on both sides of the table for over 30 years now. I've built growth through partnerships in PC, internet, cloud, mobile, AI, marketplaces, and more. I've also seen the demise of organizations that are resistant to change. I'm part of the communities, special interest groups, and associations, and I don't see one place that mirrors the ecosystem and brings it all together. You see, I see a vibrant world where hyperscalers, builders, ISV sellers, SIs, MSPs, and other partners come together to spark the ecosystem's growth. I've talked to many of you, and what I continually hear is it's noisy, I don't know whom to listen to, and where to go. There's a massive opportunity, but I'm not sure how to get there. Well, you've been heard. I want this to be your place, with your feedback and participation. If you're a builder, an innovator, or a leader, visit our website.
Dux, would you want to kind of spend a little bit of time talking about what your experience as a partner has been?
Yeah, I would love to. So maybe let me start with this conversation. So I just need to stand.
Yes.
My mouth doesn't work if I don't stand, right? So what I want to talk about is this immediate opportunity for all of you to make money, like tomorrow. In fact, money's sitting out there, and it's a shame that a lot of partners aren't taking advantage of it. This conversation with AI is just so broad and big, a couple billion, millions, but where do I start? I need to start with that $1. So I'm going to show you where that $1 starts. So first question, who uses Copilot here? Microsoft, okay, very good. Do you remember the very first thing you did with Copilot? Anybody? Anybody? Yes, Tiffany. What's that? Oh, Teams, like meeting recap, right? Anybody use Copilot to, go ahead, young man. Ask random question, right? Actually, that's what I did. So let me show you what I did. I actually recorded it because it was a very special moment for me, I want to make sure this gets commemorated. So the first question I asked is this. I asked Copilot, can you list all the files that I have access to with the word password? All right, I'm just curious, because I don't know where all my files are, right? I bet some of you are trying right now. And what's kind of interesting is it did show my ultimate Excel file. I actually have an Excel file called password that lists all my passwords. But then I suddenly see a bunch of files that I didn't know even existed. Crazy, isn't it? And the next thing I did with Copilot, I asked the same question, but instead of password, I said compensation, promotion, salary. Now, do you think Copilot is broken? No. It's behaving exactly as it should. What are you talking about, Dux? Security alert. Didn't Erwin talk about security earlier?
Yeah.
I thought Greg said we're over the trough of despair. This looks despairing. No, AI is behaving as it should. In case you don't know, Copilot is grounded by 365 data, which relies on the Microsoft Graph, which holds all the permissions, who has access to what. And Copilot believes that everybody's doing the right thing in your organization. permissions are set up right, we're not oversharing content. Hence, I see other people's files with passwords in it. And this, fellow partners, is a massive opportunity. How many of your customers are piloting Copilot right now and they're stuck because of this? Raise your hand. We really love Copilot, but we have tons of data we don't know what to do with. You watch that show, Hoarders? Yes, all your customers are like that, digital hoarders. So, in fact, I just found this recent news articles, right? Microsoft GM sees huge partner opportunity in data security a couple weeks ago. If you look this article up, essentially, Microsoft leaders are saying, partners, go build a practice around data security to help us drive Copilot. This one is from a Gartner report. 365 Copilot rollout slowed down by data security. I agree with Greg. We're over the drought of despair. What he's describing there, people get it. There's value in GenAI. Let's do it. But then reality sets in. What are we going to do with the data? And this, my friends, is so different than any other technology before. We can argue, yeah, when Teams came out, there's this adoption issue. We're past it, fine. But this is a bigger issue. Adoption is a separate conversation, I agree. We need to train people, get them, figure out how to make prompts, but we got to fix this data issue first. Opportunity is out there. Now, talking about Canalys, I just pulled this report, right? Total security spending this year is $250 billion, and it's growing year after year. And what they're seeing year after year, the investment in data security is growing. This year, $3.1 billion. Up 8.7%. Projection next year, it will double. Because as more organizations adopt the cloud, pump more data in there, use GenAI, and guess what GenAI will do? It will produce more data. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
So I know a lot of you are dreaming of big AI solutions. Oh, let's hook up SAP with Salesforce and run DMC and make AI agents out of it. Did you get run DMC? You got to first figure out how to fix all that 15-year-old TPS reports. You still have the red stapler, yeah? So, tons of opportunity. And, we don't have time. We've done research on this across 800 organizations around the world, published a report, and Gartner even cited this report where the AI opportunity indeed is great, but data would be the major stumbling block. Now, friends, when we talk about data, what are we talking about? Really, it's in the three areas that all of you partners can help with. One is in the area of data protection. What do you mean by that, Dux? In the age of ransomware, hacking, we need to protect the data, making sure that only the right people have the right access to information, and in cases when ransomware happens, you'll be able to restore data. And in fact, a lot of malicious agents now are using AI for ransomware attacks, which is really scary. Are your customers equipped? If their 365 tenant is locked out, can they still access their data? The second area is around data security. You're not going to stop people from sharing that Word document. You're not going to stop people from adding people into their teams. What do you do when you get a request? Can you add me to your teams? Everybody hits approve. You don't even bat an eye, right? But what about external access? Customers doesn't know. The third area is around data governance. If I'm in HR, I create a workspace with a bunch of documents in there. How do I know only the right people are accessing it? How do I govern data? When should it expire? Do I have to deal with information protection or records management? These are the things your customers don't think about. It's all, it's easy. AI can take care of it. Copilot can take care of it. They're great, but there's work that needs to be done that nobody wants to do. And this is our opportunity. Is this helpful so far? Okay, so now, how I want to share our story and would love to work with you if you want to. So we have the biggest data security platform in the world today. We're in the business over 20 years, and I was talking to Sandy earlier. I believe, and feel free to fact check me, we're the only Microsoft partner that went public being a Microsoft partner. Our founders, 2 people, built a backup product long time ago for a product called SharePoint, and now we're publicly traded, all by being a Microsoft partner. So thank you, Microsoft. And we built this massive data security platform serving customers all shapes and sizes and working with partners so you can help your customers as well. And this platform in the last few years, especially with the growth of Copilot, has enabled a lot of our SIs, MSPs, partners around the world to grow their own revenue. So here's an example. A lot of you are familiar doing Copilot assessment or Copilot readiness. But the biggest challenge I hear from partners is that, Dux, we do these assessments, we go in there, we train them, we find use cases, but then we find all these issues with data. The customers were like, how are we going to fix that? We have terabytes and petabytes of data. We can't scour through what's good, what's bad. How will we know what to share and not share? How can we enforce policies, right? It's all manual, unless we PowerShell the heck out of it. So this is where we go in with partners, take our tools. You don't even have to tell your customers you're using us, and build a business out of it. So here's just some examples of services our partners have built today to help customers adopt Copilot. The idea is this, right? Regardless of the type of partner organization you are, be it SI, MSP, you want recurring revenues. So in this age of GenAI, specific to making sure your customer's data is secure, tons of opportunity to have monthly recurring revenues. A lot of us here would typically do projects like, okay, I'm going to migrate you to 365. Oh, I'm going to help set you up with Copilot. Great, but that's a one-time event. What if you can build your business off of a monthly recurring revenue? Data protection services, data security services, assessments on how AI is being adopted. A lot of opportunities. So hopefully this gives you a glimpse of the opportunity today, and I guarantee all of you can do. Happy to talk to you more offline or ask questions, but I just wanted to share a very practical and big opportunity that you all have. And I see some partners we work with here, and I'm sure they're happy to share their experience as well. So with that, thank you, Neeti. I give it to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Shri, it'll be good to get your perspective.
What is that? Oh, yeah. So what I want to do is I'll probably spend 10 minutes. I'll also get some steps like
That's
you.
right.
10 minutes or so sharing some Microsoft trends. What are we saying, right? And in terms of like our customers that we work with. Like I mentioned earlier in my introduction, my team gets to work with some of the most strategic customers around the world across different industries. So I wanted to maybe spend a few minutes talking about what trends we're seeing that will hopefully be helpful for you all to figure out what scenarios that you can take advantage of on top of some of the security aspects that Dux talked about. All right, so when you see black background, that means they have Microsoft slides. I don't know why we use that, but it makes the room a little more like a dark club feel, which I think for this setup, it looks perfectly fine. All right, so I'll start with some of the trends, like I said. So the first thing is some of them that's on the slide sound super obvious, but I think it's very, very important when you are working with your clients in terms of which ones you want to bet your horse on, only because we get to see a lot of science experiments, especially my team. I'm constantly coaching them because a lot of customers that want to take advantage of the GenAI buzz, but don't really have these 3 things figured out. One is, of course, a top-down culture, which sounds pretty obvious, but in the age of AI, it's a lot more important to have the companies that you're working with have that leader-led transformation. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing a lot of small use cases, science experiments that don't have a lot of ROI, both for the customer and for yourselves. So that's number one. The second thing is, I think Dux touched upon this really well. You want to work with customers that have a data culture, right? They don't have to have all of that figured out, but they want to jump into AI, and they don't want to look at data that's definitely setting you up for failure. So you definitely want to have the conversation around data. Whether you think of it as glass half empty with garbage in, garbage out, or glass half full where data is the fuel that powers AI, that's a super important conversation that you want to have with your customers. And then the last one is, of course, willingness to change, which is important in the world of AI. So what I'll do is I'll talk about what are some of the key things that we're also seeing in terms of preparing for the era of AI. I think Dux already touched a couple of these things around making sure that there's data culture, you understand what the pain points are. But one of the things that's super important here is we have a lot of different options out there in the marketplace today, right? So we have many companies, we have many generative AI vendors that are producing large language models as we speak. So the key thing is to sort of help your customer even understand what's out there, what are the resources and technology that they need in place to put it together. So a very standard consulting opportunity would be to even do that sort of an assessment into where they are in terms of that maturity spectrum, right? So we see customers in different areas in their maturity curve. Some of them are obviously just starting out. They really don't understand what are the options out there. And then there are customers that are far along to the right where they have a lot of those resources and technology already in place, but now trying to understand what specific scenarios they need to adopt to move forward. And so the way we think about some of that also is this left to right approach of the customer maturity that I just talked about, right? And this is a Microsoft view at the bottom in terms of what offerings that we have to help those customers. I think the question that Dux asked, what is the first thing you do with Copilot? So a lot of, I think, customers already take advantage of the built-in capabilities in the Microsoft first-party products, like Teams, like Office, et cetera. And that's usually the starting point for a lot of customers, and then using the GenAI models to ask questions on their data. But then as they move along the spectrum, that's where the opportunities for us partners come into play, right? So it's great that they have all of these first-party offerings, which gives them a good glimpse into what GenAI can do. But how do you now take it to the next step? How do you extend those SaaS offerings that companies like Microsoft have into customization that actually makes sense of their business? So I was just chatting with Neeti, and we were using Teams for one of the prep calls for this session, and she showed me this. What is the AI Copilot thing that you were using?
Otter AI.
Yeah, I was like, why are you not using Teams? Well, Teams has that AI Copilot already built in. And the response was, well, Mr. Microsoft, not everybody uses Teams. So there's lots of other products out there. So my point here is that starting with the SaaS offerings is great, but that's a very Microsoft-focused view. And as customers then try to grapple and say, yeah, it's great that we have Microsoft for Sales, which is built into our Dynamics platform. I have Salesforce, I have a lot of these other platforms, and not everything is going to be utilized by the built-in AI capabilities that we offer. So that's when the extension of those capabilities and customization comes into play. It can be as simple as using some of our products like the Copilot Studio to say, how do you take the existing SaaS offerings and extend it so that you can reach out to these other data sources like Salesforce as an example. So we have a lot of those connectors that you can take advantage of to start that customization. And then as they move along that maturity curve, we have customers that now want to build their own custom Copilot, right? Because they want to integrate that into a specific workflow. So maybe they have a risk assessment solution and they want to take advantage of the capabilities of these GenAI technologies to understand risk and take action. Well, that's not in Teams, and that's not in Word, or that's not extending an existing Copilot. That's building something from scratch, right? So those opportunities are for customers that are a little bit more on the far right of the maturity spectrum, where they have their data repositories all in order. That's key. And then they've played with GenAI in terms of some of these first-party offerings, and they've seen the value of what these capabilities can provide. But let's really talk about their business and how they can help integrate a lot of them into their business workflows. And that's building the custom Copilot. And then last but not the least, the far right, these are maybe companies, as we call them, digital natives, that are building their own models. They're building their own Gen AI platforms, right? And the partner opportunity for that sort of a customer is really to then help them understand, again, the tool set and the landscape that are out there. So OpenAI and Azure OpenAI and our partnership gets a lot of attention, rightfully so, because that's one of the leading models out there in the industry. But there are many other offerings out there. And there are lots of open source models, Mistral, Meta has Llama, obviously Google has Gemini, et cetera. So customers are all confused about like what's the right tool to use for the use case. And so the ones on the far right are trying to figure that out by using the infrastructure as is, that is GPUs, et cetera, from NVIDIA and AMD, and figuring out how do they take the existing models and maybe customize it for a specific industry. So for example, we have a great partner and customer of ours called Harvey AI, who built their own large language models that's aimed at the legal industry. So they said that they looked at all the existing offerings out there, and it wasn't good enough for them to extend, customize, or even build their own Copilot. They had to actually go take advantage of completely fine-tuning some of the offerings out there and build their own models. So that's the far right in terms of like the maturity spectrum of the different customers and the opportunities that you have. Does that make sense? All right. So I will skip through some of these because I think we should get into like the Q&A discussion here. And some of the 4 pillars around digital transformation still very much apply to AI transformation, was a point of the previous slide. But I think it's always better expressed in terms of customer examples. Obviously, this is a very small sampling of the customers that are actually in production with our GenAI technologies. And I picked customers across various industries because I know that, as partners, we don't cater to like one industry, or some of you may. But the point here is that this is not an industry-specific item that you all need to be thinking about. There are opportunities across many industries. There are lots of horizontal scenarios that you can address across many industries, but then some of them could be focused on financial services customer like a PayPal, or some of them like H&R Block. It's still a horizontal scenario. It's just that they have put a wrapper around how we can use it for their enterprise. So with H&R Block, which is a customer that I worked with, so they are using the generative AI conversational capabilities in their AI tax assistant software, which sort of makes sense for them, right? So instead of the classic 10-year-old chatbot where you ask a question about a tax information, it just finds you a random article. This is a really rich, complex chat interface where it can actually do the work of a tax agent in their case. Now, they're using it only for those scenarios where it can be self-served to increase their customer base. They still have their army of tax consultants. In fact, they increased the number of tax consultants that are working for H&R Block, mainly because with GenAI, they found out that the subscriber base has increased with some of the low-lying use cases. But then when they have an escalation and they have to call somebody, that's when their senior tax agents come into play. So talking about assistants replacing, it's actually the opposite for H&R Block. They're using it as a way to augment some of what they've already been doing. And then I have a lot of other examples. So one specifically that I think maybe is good to talk about is call agents and call agent coaching. Vodafone is one of our customers that is using our GenAI capabilities to integrate into their call agent software, a super agent as they call it, where if I'm a call agent taking a call, I can go into my super agent, which is powered by GenAI, to real-time answer a lot of complex questions and actually give me direct feedback on even the next set of sentences that I can utter back to my customer. Huge increase in customer satisfaction and a lot of other productivity gains that they've seen there. So just another example of customers that are doing this with our platform. The last thing I will talk about here, and I'll pass it to Neeti for a panel of questions here, is around responsible AI and security. Dux touched upon it. It's a very important topic for us at Microsoft and for the industry, right? And I'm sure as you're working with your customer, there's going to be a lot of questions on, hey, what do these models do? I don't want to be using these models because it's learning about my data. From a Microsoft standpoint, we're very, very clear that the simplest way to answer this question is your data is your data. None of the data the customers are using gets used by us for retraining our models. It does not even get looked on. The only time we would even take a look at the data is for things like content filtering, where if there is abusive content that's being sent to our models, we want to make sure that we are watching for that and providing feedback. But otherwise, the key responsibility that we have as a platform company is your data is your data, so we don't use it for any of the training of the models. And then we have customer copyright commitment that you probably have all seen, where there's a lot of this content that's generated by GenAI. The customers are liable because sometimes they may have copyright violation on them, but we have a commitment to help protect in those scenarios where there is a situation like that. So that's our stance on security overall. So with that, I'll hand it back to Neeti to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Sriram. So we started with kind of laying out the AI opportunity for you. Dux did a great job telling how you can go from 0 to 1 if you're just starting out and get that first dollar. And then Sriram kind of gave you a perspective of AI use cases and what the customers are asking for, building. Obviously, as you kind of bring it all together, the holy grail from a partner perspective is how do you monetize this, right? How do you actually make more than $1? Because yes, we are here to make a buck, but not just a buck, right? So that brings us back to the heart of the AI conversation is data, right? And we talked about it. We all kind of touched upon it during the course of our presentations here. So I want to kind of bring it back to data and have a few questions for both Dux and Sriram around how do you make sure that the data is ready? Because if the data is not ready, and why is it important? So I'll start with that. And then maybe I'll also have a few of the audience build on that, and I'll invite you to kind of ask questions as well. So Dux, why do you think data readiness is important? Recap it for us.
Sure, very good. So we all know that our customers, especially at this day and age in their, I would pick Microsoft, for example, their 365 tenant, they have a lot of redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. Because way back when customers decided to move to 365, a lot of them were like, we don't have time, just move everything. And once we're there, we're gonna clean it up, right? Just like when you move a house, you're gonna move everything. Once you're in the new house, you're gonna unpack the box, sort it out, and all that. 10 years later, right, unless your wife threatens you for a divorce, then you're gonna clean up. That's what happened to me. But that aside, the reality is a lot of the data, we talk about data readiness, the quality is not good. So the last thing you want, you ask Copilot, hey, what's the latest policy on expense report? You don't want Copilot to pull from a 20-year-old expense policy document, which gives wrong information. So that's number one. That's why data readiness is very important. So what needs to happen is partners or customers, the same way, need to make sure that the data they have is relevant and usable. Now, what happens with the old stuff, the redundant, the obsolete, trivial? They can get rid of it, that's one, or maybe they can archive it elsewhere just in case. Because that's the other issue we have with customers. You tell customers, hey, you don't need this 20-year-old data. Well, you never know, just in case, right? Fine, let's archive it somewhere. In fact, let's archive it in a place, maybe it's cheaper storage. Because as we all know, 365 is not unlimited storage. That's the other concern. The use of AI will generate more data, which is great, but will increase your storage as well. So that's one reason why data readiness is important. We got to get rid of redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. The second reason, and there's really two key reasons, is again, data security. We know that because of the ease of use of 365, it's so easy to share a Word document, a PowerPoint, invite external users. Well, it's there because you want to collaborate better and easier, more productive, but then there's always that risk, right? And it only takes one bad event to happen. So data readiness really looks at two things, the data quality and the data security. How do you make sure only the right people has the right access to the right information?
So Sriram, talk to us about why data readiness is important, but from a Copilot perspective and Copilot adoption perspective, because there's been a lot of questions about Copilot adoption, and from a customer perspective, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think like Doug said, he talked about the Copilots that are built into the Microsoft platform. It uses the Office graph data, right? So at Microsoft Engineering, we do a lot of work to make sure that we can go after the right data sets that's accessible by the Microsoft graph and present it in a way that's augmented to the questions the user is asking. One of the common architectural techniques that you'll see without getting too technical is something called as a RAG technique, right? Retrieve, augment, and generate. So that's all about data. Being able to retrieve the right type of data and then augmenting that to the context of the question that somebody is asking and generating a response is what's going to give you the most accurate result sets. Otherwise, when we think about why is AI not giving me the right answers, a lot of it has to do with that's sort of like making sure that you have access to the right data context. Now, with the Microsoft first-party products, because it relies on Office graph data, we do it. But that's not going to be the case for a real-life customer implementation that requires customization and going after their data set, right? So when you go after your data set in the company, then somebody, a partner, needs to come in and make sure that the data is classified, it's categorized. What do we do with unstructured data? What do we do with structured data? How do we make sure that, using different techniques like RAG as an example, that the correct context is brought in to a question that somebody asks? Because the context is not brought in correctly, AI is only going to know whatever, the context that was provided, and you're going to get incorrect answers. So from a partner standpoint as well, data readiness and quality is super important, because that's going to be the key to the customer seeing value. Otherwise, a lot of times what we see is, those questions are not really what I expected, right? They're incorrect answers. Right. And a lot of times it's because the data readiness is not done correctly.
Sri said something that's very important, right? Unstructured data is growing at a pace far beyond structured data.
Right.
Way back when, data security was not a thing, because most of the more important data is considered as structured data. It's tagged, organized in tables, what have you. But these days, a lot of critical information is in your unstructured data, in an email, in a Teams chat, in a Word document.
Right.
And frankly, the industry hasn't paid enough attention to it until today, right? So AI is great, but it's driving the need to focus on securing unstructured data.
Yeah, I think building on the data readiness, talk to me and the audience a little bit about the governance. So how are customers dealing with the AI governance issue? And then follow it by, and I think everyone in the room probably wants to hear a perspective from an AI regulation perspective. So kind of start with the AI governance. Dux, maybe you can talk a little bit, and maybe Sriram, you can talk a little bit about the AI regulation beat, because we all want to hear what your perspectives on that are.
A lot of people don't want to talk about the G word, but governance is a good thing. The way I describe and define governance is making it easy for people to do the right thing. That's it, right? Make it easy for people to do the right thing. Because if you think about data governance, AI governance in this context, there's 3 areas that we consider. 3 areas, right? So when we think about data governance, first is, where would this data set reside? Meaning, data typically lives in what's called containers or workspaces. In the 365 landscape, it lives in OneDrive, it lives in Outlook, it lives in Teams, it lives in SharePoint, right? So the first layer of data governance is, how do you provision and create these containers or workspaces? Simple question, who can create teams? Because in the end, data would live in teams, right? Is it anybody and everybody in the company? Or do you have to make a request to IT? Dear IT, I bought you 3 rounds of H&R Block last night. Can you give me a team, right? So that's the first layer. How are these data workspaces or data containers provisioned? That needs to be governed. Yeah. The second layer is, once these containers or data workspaces are created, how are you enforcing policies? For example, let's say I am in accounting. I created a team. Can I put Excel files with customer financial data in that team? If the governance document says you can't do that, I don't read the governance document. Who reads the governance document? How are you enforcing these policies? So that's the second layer. How are you enforcing data policies? The third layer of data governance is around information management lifecycle. Right? Once this data set is not being used anymore, again, let me ask everybody. If you have a team, you're working on a project, what happens to the teams once the project is done?
Yeah.
It's just there, right? It just sits there. But what if you're in a highly regulated industry? HIPAA compliance, right? FDA compliance. Sarbanes-Oxley, where it states that financially related data can only be stored for 7 years. How do you govern information lifecycle or data lifecycle? So you think about data governance, these 3 key areas. How do you govern the creation of data workspaces or containers? how do you enforce data policies, and how do you manage the data lifecycle as you use it.
Yeah, that's great. What about, so tell us about the AI regulation piece. What's your perspective on, and what are you hearing from customers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it's also very industry specific, but at the same time, I mean, there's governmental, societal, implications on where, this is going to go in the future, right? So way above my pay grade, luckily. But having said that, I mean, for what we have in our control, right, depending on the industries that we talk to, like compliance is an aspect that, we can definitely make sure that we are being very responsible in the way we talk to our customers. So you mentioned HIPAA. So healthcare is an industry that, I get to work with quite a bit. And that's a very sensitive, industry in terms of like what types of use cases and partner opportunities that we want to talk to them about. So when we go and talk to some of the providers, as an example, if they're coming to us and talking about, hey, using these GenAI models so I can make a clinical decision, I'm going to be very iffy about it, right? I'm like, I'll give you the platform perspective, but that's beyond what, any of us in the room can control. But having said that, there is immediate value to be had, even in that example where, well, yeah, those are like some high-risk use cases. We definitely want to think about it like more in a holistic perspective, but there are so many low-risk use cases that a provider can actually take advantage of today. And that's kind of like my approach. So in that same example, so one of our biggest partners in ISVs is Epic, who obviously, from a US healthcare system standpoint, own a lot of the hospital data and their applications that sit on it. So we work with them to figure out some of these low-risk use cases. One of them being, so doctors apparently complain a lot about something called as pajama time, where on top of seeing patients, they have to go and do a lot of manual note-taking and summarization of the patient visit. And then if you're in a hospital where you're handing over the shift from one doctor to another, you got to do something called as a shift report and transfer that to the other doctor. Well, come GenAI, they can do a lot of this, much, much faster with still a human in the loop, right? I'm not asking GenAI to create a shift report for me and saying, yeah, here, hand it over. But hopefully maybe with other technologies, it's doing some ambient listening, taking notes or whatever. And now all I'm doing is, hey, can you create a shift report for me? And me as a doctor, I'm looking at it, making sure that it did not miss any key items. And if it did, I'm going to correct it. So it's still a Copilot, not an autopilot. I'm going to make sure that I'm providing all of that guidance and then sending the shift report. Now, the 30 minutes of pajama time that I would normally have to do something like this is hopefully 5 to 10 minutes. That's the value of, in that scenario, a low-risk use case. So I'm not directly answering your question because AI regulation is a very complex subject, but I'm talking about what we have in our control in terms of making sure that there are lots and lots of low-risk use cases that really do not require regulatory authority that we can actually start working on today.
Yeah, thank you. I know we took you on a journey from what is the AI opportunity. We talked about AI use cases, and a ton of you are already working on many of those. The monetization opportunity. We talked about challenges in data readiness, data quality, and we talked a little bit about opportunities for governance as well as security. And then, of course, as we think of regulations in different geos in different countries, as well as from a compliance in the organization and from an individual data privacy perspective, I think there is a ton of opportunity for all of us in the room who have this special seat to be able to have these kind of conversations with Microsoft, not only at the event here, but also in our regular day jobs. I would say seize the opportunity, because we're just at the start of this tectonic shift, as Vince always talks about. And I think we should be the people who seize this opportunity and make money from this great change that's happening, instead of being afraid of which AI agent is going to take over our jobs. That would be kind of where I would leave it. I do want to open it up for questions, because I know you'll have a lot of questions for this really great panel, and have Dux and Sriram and I kind of chime in and answer. I think Petri is already raising his hand, so I know he's going to go for the difficult question. So Petri, let's hear it from you.
Yeah, Petri Salonen from Telus International. So I've been driving a lot of software pricing packaging workshops for for ISVs of different size. And now with the inclusion of GenAI, that's causing a lot of issues, a lot of things like the costing side of things. So what are you seeing specifically from a ISV perspective? What are the complications of the pricing side of things? Or do you?
Pricing of?
Pricing.
The monetization of solutions serviced by GenAI.
For us, we don't see any complication, at least maybe because our business is focused on data security. So AI aside, because 5 years from now, it may be another technology, data will always be data. So for us, what we're seeing the opportunity, so for our core products, we're just like Microsoft, we're subscription-based. Customers can buy, whatever products in our platform and, X dollars per user per month. But what we're seeing, which is cool is for our partners. So in my example earlier, right, we have partners now offering recurring revenue opportunity, like our MSP partners, where they would offer data protection services. So let's say customer A buys a license from this managed service provider, I don't know, E3 plus Copilot, and then they would bundle in data protection services alongside it, right? And then certainly they would take our product and some of their time and add that and put their margins in as a way to do their recurring revenue. So from a pricing perspective, I see now there's the partner-to-partner better together story, ISV and a lot of the services partners building these bundles specific to AI.
Yeah, but if you have a use case where you can't really estimate the consumption side of things, but you still have to price it, so that's why really what I was driving towards. But if you have a use case where you know what's going to cost you, you as an ISV, but it's going to be use cases where it's hard. Think about Copilot for Office 365. I'm sure Microsoft has figured out why it's $30 per user per month.
Yeah.
But there's going to be users that are going to be more costly. So that's kind of side of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can add a couple of things. Yeah, I think it's a great question. So the way I think about it is kind of to Dux's point. I mean, the traditional pricing strategies, I don't know how much it changes. I mean, obviously there are certain things that are harder to estimate with, the models and, them evolving. One of the challenges that we face actually in the custom Copilot scenarios, which is what I get into a lot, is models are getting cheaper by the day, right? So, and it's getting more efficient. Great thing for the customers, right? Absolutely the right thing to do. But my boss doesn't set quotas based on that evolution of the cost model. So having said that, I mean, I think from a pricing standpoint, we try our best to take a look at the existing customer base that's already doing this and do some sort of t-shirt size estimation, right? So we do have that, from a platform standpoint. I mean, the partner value proposition, I think we can talk to my partner counterparts to maybe provide that layer on top. But happy to share, that sort of information in terms of what we're doing, because it is absolutely a great question. And from the customer side, I think what they're struggling with is the ROI, because those things also change quite a bit. And so I do a lot of exec presentations, and the number one question I get from the CXO is, that ROI is great for that use case, but that's not good enough for me. Those Gartner slides with the dollar figures are all great, but how do I localize it to my particular environment? And pricing is obviously a big part of that conversation, right? So I'm not giving you a direct answer, but I would say, yeah, I mean, I think we can just only go by the data that we already have in terms of what these customers have done in certain segments, in certain industries, and sort of come up with some sort of t-shirt side estimation on where it can go.
Yeah, I think pricing is an important conversation in the value creation story, right? And it is not only the cost of the platform and the cost of new AI models, the foundation models, but it's also about what is the value beyond the experimentation, because a lot of experiments are going on right now in customer and partner organizations. So if you're already getting questions about pricing, that's a good thing. I would say that's a great sign that now the experimentation is over and pricing is a real conversation. So thank you, Petri, for bringing, you are a guru in this space, so we'll have to check in with you after this. Any other questions beyond pricing?
I think it's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime, everyone's hungry. Well, we won't want to keep you. Yes, okay, great. Then we are excused. Yes.
Please welcome to the stage Vince Menzione.
Okay.
Oh, Vince.
There's one more question.
There's one more question. We'll take that. But Vince, you can come.
Do it again later.
Come join us.
But you can answer the question.
Maybe you could answer that one.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Thank you.
So I've been with Warner Brothers Records for 37 years, and obviously technology moves much faster than the laws. So learning a little bit about AvePoint, and you're a company known for data management and governance, as you just mentioned, you can play a significant role in addressing the challenges posed by AI in the music industry. So particularly concerning unauthorized duplication of artist work and the protection of intellectual property, like the recent lawsuits filed by major record labels, including Warner's, against AI-generated companies like Suno and Udio, and they highlight the urgent need for effective regulation and protection measures in this evolving landscape. Is there something you're actively doing to bring about regulation related to AI
What's your name?
infringement?
Oh, I didn't get your name. I'm sorry.
My name's Al B. Shore.
LB.
I'll be
Yes,
sure.
sir.
I'll be sure. Oh, pleasure to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Fantastic question, right? Copyright. We're now in a day and age, regardless if it's music, videos, your own image, for that matter, has come into question because of this technology. As a tech company, certainly we have ways to look at what the data is about, who owns it, compare it with databases out there that can validate, but it comes down to laws and regulation as well. So let me share an example. In fact, this is happening with my team right now. So as a chief brand officer, I look after a lot of our creatives in the organization. But as Sri was talking about the benefit, the value, so we've invested in a technology, which I'm not going to name. They're all over, because we need to produce a lot of training videos for our partners. This is the use case. We have a lot of products. In a typical 5-minute video, the whole production, the filming, the production, the dubbing to multiple languages is a lot. But with this technology, they're going to film me for 15 minutes, record my voice, and we can just feed it a Word document. It will pump out a training video with me speaking any language. So once you start seeing Dux speaking Algerian, that's not me, it's there. So that's the benefit. So now the question becomes, well, what if fast forward to the future, Dux decides, I don't want this anymore. So I'm working with my legal team to, if we're going to use the likeness of somebody, we have to have, some legal, at least right now, documentation say it's okay. Yeah, so going back to your question, are there technologies today to prevent that or mitigate that? There is, but just like any technology, there's always something new will come out and overcome that. It's no different than when Netflix came out, when all these streaming technologies came out, where now the movie theaters but now they figured it out, right? So I'm not sure if that's the answer you're looking for. But
No, thank you. That was good. I think more of my question was, what at this point is your company doing to initiate the regulation process related to, because as we said, the laws move much, the technology moves much faster than the laws. So that's one of the monsters that we're dealing with as it relates to, and I'm kind of a veteran in this, but just knowing that when I first signed to Warner Brothers back in 1988, none of this technology existed
Correct.
back then. So it was never implemented in the contracts as well. So the record companies then grew, and the technology existed, but it didn't address the technology. So now they made their own deals with the Spotifys and all these aggregators to distribute. So it's a constant, as you know, it's a never-ending question. But whatever you can do to implement something from your company would be greatly appreciated for our industry.
Sure.
one thing I want to add, which I give kudos to Microsoft. So one of the challenges, as we all know, this thing's moving so fast that education is key. So for example, Microsoft, at least in the US, works with an industry organization called Voices for Innovation. In fact, I encourage all partners to check them out. You can join as a partner. So it's essentially a tech advocacy group that works with the US government, that Microsoft, through Brad Smith's organization, support, that helps educate our government leaders around these changes. So back in the days when the cloud was just starting, cybersecurity, and I'm grateful to be a part of that group. There's a few partners here that are part of that group. We would meet with senators, congressmen, just to educate them on what these things are, hopefully to spur ideas on helping drive better regulation. And I think that's one thing where we as the tech industry can do is educate our leaders, our government officials, because we can build anything with tech. But unless, what the gentleman said, unless the law is there to balance it out, it's a moot point, right? So.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would add to the copyright law is actually pretty old, right? So as what is also happening is as these lawsuits are coming to be, right? So in the music industry or creative industry, I think that's also pushing the law to now think about certain things. And I think there's a question about fairness and accountability, which is going to come about as a result of asking those questions. So I would say keep asking those questions and make sure that the laws also evolve as a result of the technology evolution and the transformation, which brings us back to, not all questions can be answered, and this is the group that should be in the process of figuring it out. And that challenge about copyright is an opportunity for a new kind of business to emerge. And I hope some of you in this room would take that opportunity to build that business, is how I would put it. And that brings us back to Vince's growth mindset attribute and bring that. If there's any question, we can take that. Otherwise, we can wrap this up. And is there any kind of last words of wisdom, Dux and Sriram, that you have as a learning for yourself, or as you've been kind of working in this space, and that you can share with? So maybe start with Sriram, and then Dux, we could wrap up with you.
Yeah, I think we covered it quite a bit in the session, but I think it's worth repeating again and again that make sure that there's like 3 things that when you're talking to your customers, like it's got that top-level leadership sponsorship, right? I mean, that's pretty key. Otherwise, a lot of these projects stay as science experiments, number 1. Number 2, we talked about data quite a bit. So data is the fuel. Make sure that the customers you're working with have a strong data culture. Otherwise, again, we're going to be spinning a lot of wheels, and everybody wants to jump into AI, and that's great. But let's make sure we go back and focus on that data foundation. And last but not the least is the customers that are willing to take on this transformation journey, and not everything is going to be smooth. So they have to have that willingness to change. So those 3 things, I think, are what I would summarize it with.
I mean, for me, I just like to repeat, our job is to make it easy for people or for our customers to do the right thing. That's it. That's why we're here. And the cool thing is we get paid to do that, right? Who would want to do it? So we'd love to connect with you all. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, just hit me up. If you have questions, happy to talk to you.
Yeah, and we'll be around, so come have coffee, have lunch, talk to us. We'd love to brainstorm on what the opportunities you're seeing and how we can help you from not just the AI use cases, governance, security, and all the topics we covered today, but any challenges that you're seeing which we can turn into an opportunity for you. So with that, I would say it's a wrap, and thank you so much, Dux and Sriram, to be here, and I really, really enjoyed and learned a lot from you, so thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this incredible session, and we're only getting started. If you missed the event live and in person, you can watch all of our recordings by joining the Ultimate Partner Experience community, where all of our events, workshops, and content are hosted by Ultimate Partner. You can also sign up for our newsletter by going to theultimatepartner.com. In addition, you can watch our podcasts on YouTube by going to our YouTube channel and subscribing, or listen on your favorite podcast app. And please subscribe and give us feedback. In addition, we would love you to join Ultimate Partner community. Go to theultimatepartner.com to learn more.